Hello, come on in. Come on in, come on in. Excited to be here for book club number 6. It's already been 6 book clubs. We're going to be discussing some beautiful themes from this book. A radical awakening, turn pain into power, embrace your truth, and live free. Buy the book if you haven't already. So excited to be here. So I start this book with a poem that Alicia Keys just happened to read so beautifully. If you missed it, you can catch her rendition on her Instagram or my Instagram. So she read the whole poem out. It's the poem that begins this book. It's called The Time of the Awakened Woman. And in this book, I talk about how women need to come out of their unworthiness and their fears and their insecurities. So I write, there comes a time in the life of a woman when she no longer cowers in the shadows of her unworthiness, when she no longer plays small so others can feel big, and when she swaps the role of victim for the role of co-creator. So I chose that paragraph for this moment and the one that follows it, where I write, there comes a time in the life of a woman when she unabashedly and boldly occupies her ultimate sovereignty, when she finally feels ready to claim her space in the world, and when she redefines compassion as unequivocal self-love. So I just chose these 2 stanzas for this moment. You have to read the whole poem. It's a beautiful poem. You can hear Alicia Keys reading it if you go to her Instagram or mine. But the reason I'm highlighting those 2 paragraphs here is because these are unique to women. These issues are unique to women. Now, do some men go through the shadows of their unworthiness and play small so others can play big and have a problem occupying their sovereignty? Sure. But for the most part, it is, Tina says, I listened to the audiobook, the most amazing and precious 15 hours. Oh, Tina, thank you. Leave a review for us on Audible or wherever you got it from. So men experience this too, but not to the degree as us women. There needs to be a book about it. That's why I'm writing this book called, I've written this book called A Radical Awakening. Grab your copy, because as a therapist, I work with scores of women all over the world. And I cannot tell you if I have met one woman who hasn't been caught up in the throes of their unworthiness because of how culture has brainwashed us. Atavo was just listening to the audiobook. Maya Torres is going to buy the book. Oh, hi, you were in my masterclass yesterday. Wonderful. Happy you're here. We're talking about a radical awakening. Grab your copy. So the first chapter of this book is called Soul Erosion. Because again, women in droves are raised to chip away at their soul. So I begin on page 1 of this book. Like a sword in a sheath, her brilliance stays dormant. Like a bow in a quiver, her power stays invisible. Like a pea in a pod, her worth stays small. Like a trapped animal in a cage, she awaits permission to be freed. Like a butterfly in formation, she will only emerge when her old skin dies. Heather says, the truth in your book is mind-blowing. I listen while I run. It is so inspiring. Thank you, guys. So we're talking about a radical awakening because woman after woman is eroding at her soul level. Woman after woman is disconnected, not knowing where to go because she's been so used to waiting for permission. She's so used to dimming her light. So this is her unique conundrum, more than the man, because women in droves are experiencing this. So I begin the book with a moment in my life where my soul was being eroded and I had no idea. This is the thing. You're living in a fog. I call it the fog, where you're not aware that there's something off. Bills are going unpaid, ankles are hurting, you're exhausted, you're cursing, but you don't realize that something is off. And I call it living in a fog. So I write in the first page of the book, I knew I was in trouble when I found myself in a ditch on the side of the road with zero recollection of how I got there. I had fallen asleep at the wheel and my car had stopped inches from a tree. The jolt woke me up. I could barely breathe and my entire body was shaking. Jittery and confused, I was luckily able to get my car back onto the highway. Thankfully, there was no injury to anyone. Even my vehicle was undamaged. But the incident brought to the fore another kind of casualty that had been eroding me from within for a long time. The serious destruction I had been doing to my soul. Soul erosion is a gradual process, a slow, creeping, chipping away of our inner being, resulting in the inevitable death of all we know to be our truest selves. It is a disease that begins in childhood and spreads contagiously, especially in women. Its symptoms include loss of power, authenticity, voice, and vision. Soul erosion is essentially an obliteration of our inner knowing. So, who feels as if they have had or are going through a soul erosion? And typically we women stay in denial. We like to blame the weather, blame our young children, blame the credit card debt, blame our weight. We have a lot of reasons why we stay extremely suppressed to our own power, yes? Because, yes, it is more convenient to stay asleep. That's why I call the book A Radical Awakening, because in order to truly awaken to our own inner power, you have to radically awaken. You can't just wake up in the morning. We've been doing that, but we are zombies. So this means that we need to fully own who it is we are in our current misery, who we are. How are we here? How are we painting the palette of misery in our lives? It's really difficult to awaken to our own dysfunction, right? We can see Sam's dysfunction, Bob's dysfunction, Elena's dysfunction, and Trisha's dysfunction. But we can't see our own dysfunction. So to see our own dysfunction is the radical awakening. I know no one wants to wake up in the morning and say to themselves, let me see my own madness. But the beautiful thing is the madness is everywhere. It's everywhere. We are just in denial because it's easier to stay suppressed to our own knowing. Yes, Pragya, it is my responsibility to be aware and heal. How many of us have spent so many decades complaining and complaining and complaining because we cast ourselves in the victim? Now, I explain in this book there's a difference between a victim and somebody who stays in victim consciousness. And when I use the word victim here, I mean victim consciousness. Sometimes we are a victim of an accident, a rape, a burglary. But when we stay in victim consciousness, we are actually in denial of our role. It's like, oh, I'm always the good one. No, you're not. You may be lesser of the two evils in a dynamic, but your presence is co-creating the other's madness. Two to tango. So take that to the macro, and you are part of every emotional experience in your life. Francesca says, my soul erosion led to a brain tumor. I'm healing on all levels now. So, not that we can predict every disease or every catastrophe in our lives, but a lot of our catastrophes are laying crumbs to clue that they are coming. We keep missing alignment day by day. Each time, from childhood, our true self said, do this. But because we wanted to be the pleaser, or we wanted to be the good one, or we were too scared to stand up, the true self said, do this, we did this. Then again, the true self said, do this. We said, it's okay, we'll do it later, we did this. And soon, the true self was like, damn it, I'm just not going to say anything because she ignores me or he ignores me. And the true self begins to fade. And you keep making steps, not listening. And the steps are you're listening to someone, but you're listening to who? You're listening to those around you who keep you tethered to their love, conditional love, to their opinion, to their validation. Soul erosion takes away our physical well-being as well. Yes, it does. So we keep ignoring our true self for what? For the other. Their opinion matters more. I don't care if it's your mom or your dad or your sister or your best friend. Their opinion matters more. Because that's how we girls are trained to be nice. So, this is how we were raised, to pay attention to the other, to make them happy, to exist for them. And each time your true self knew what to do. Your true self was clear at one time. But because you kept ignoring your true self, you didn't check in. What does my true self want? What does my true self feel? What does my true self need? You didn't check in. You checked out. And you thought mom's opinion, dad's opinion, sister's opinion, best friend's opinion, magazine's opinion, culture's opinion was more, teacher's opinion was more important. You completely stampeded on your inner knowing. You just kept looking outward. And as long as we do this, we will have a massive soul attack, a soul erosion. I'm doing book club number 6 from my book, A Radical Awakening. To radically awaken means to notice the great inner betrayal. I write in the book, to keep the peace for the sake of keeping the peace, which is not authentic peace, is to wage a war against oneself. The greatest act of war you can wage against yourself is to not speak your truth when you know what your truth is. And to deny it, to suppress it, to ignore it, and to sidestep it is an act of betrayal, an act of war against your own soul. So we are all at some point or the other going to experience a soul erosion where finally everything collapses. So a radical awakening is to reclaim the inner power that you have. Women especially have lost their inner power. Now, many men are like, what about us? What about us? Okay, it's like all lives matter. Yes, you matter, men. But right now, we're talking about the women. And it's okay, it's not a duality, it's just a different soul erosion, different conditions. Men are also eroded in their soul, we know that. But they are conditioned differently. And in order for us to heal ourselves, our children, and the planet, we women need to step up into our feminine power. Not toxic femininity which has a healthy masculine energy, which is not afraid to speak loudly, not afraid to show up, but connected to the heart. Women are able to do that. But what we have forgotten is the masculine power that we need to evoke, not toxic masculinity, a healthy masculinity, which allows us to put ourselves first. So in my book, A Radical Awakening, I lay a path for you from being asleep in the matrix, how we all are asleep in the matrix, to how we begin to shed the layers of the ego step by step by step to awaken to who it is we are. Our conditioning is different than the boys, than the men. It just is. We have been conditioned to please, to be pleasing, to gain our sense of worth from what other people think of us. And until that breaks, until that hunger for the outside validation breaks, we will not enter our inner power. So Simran asked, does it take a long time to wake up? Waking up it can be a momentary jolt of epiphany, and you get it, that we're living in a matrix, we're living in an illusion. But staying awake is not easy. Very often, most of us, because the waking up is so brutal, it's so anti-mainstream, anti-establishment, that we scurry back into the matrix because we're so afraid to be alone. But here's the thing. The only reason we go back into the matrix is not because the matrix was amazing. It's because we don't know the unknown. And that's what the pandemic has shown us beautifully. Look, we were thrust into the unknown. Despite tremendous tragedy, here we are. Those who are here. We did it. We adapted. Humans are resilient. You are resilient. You just don't know you are. So the goal in life is not to resist pain, but to lean into the power to tolerate it. You can tolerate it. You're not a princess and a diva that much. You can handle pain. The only reason you can't handle it in your mind is because you've been conditioned to believe you can't handle it. I too, many points in my life thought, I can't do it. I did a PhD while in a new country and with my daughter and no help, and it was insane. And I kept saying, I can't do it. But I did it. You just do it. It's scary. It's torturous. It's exhausting. And I'm not saying you have to torture yourself. I'm just saying that the pain we think is unbearable is because we've decided it is. It is not because it really is. Most of the pain that we think is unbearable is simply the pain of the unknown. When we understand that the unknown is always an element of life, then we won't be so afraid of most of the pain in our life. Like in the pandemic, people were afraid of entering the birth canal and were resisting it. But here we are, a year later, a global ubiquitous trauma and a global ubiquitous resilience rising. We're still here. So in my book, A Radical Awakening, I take you through a process to remind you of who it is you truly are. We've just forgotten who it is we are. This book will stir you to your own inner authentic power. It's not my power that you're going to remember when you read these pages. It's your own forgotten self. The way it's written is to take you back so that you can reclaim your lost self. And once you do, it's not that you become a renegade, vindictive person. You become a spiritual warrior who's here to save her own soul. She's here to end the soul erosion. She's here to say no more. I deserve my ultimate sovereignty. That is why I wrote this book, because I want to give my sisters their ultimate sovereignty back to them. But they have to reclaim it. It's theirs. They just are seeing it, touching it, but they're not claiming it. So this is the coupon to go claim your ultimate sovereignty. Thank you for joining me, guys. I'll be back with another book club very soon. Grab your copy, A Radical Awakening, and check out Alicia Keys reading the first few pages, The Time of an Awakened Woman. Go check her out. She read the poem that begins this book. Thanks, guys. Bye.